When she refused to laugh, the moment that changed late-night TV. The lights were warm, the energy casual, and the audience at CBS Studios in Los Angeles was primed for laughter. Stephen Colbert sat behind his desk, sipping water between jokes, riding the high of an audience already loosened up with political jabs and unscripted riffs. This was a late show, comfortable, predictable, safe. Then Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett walked onto the stage. Her entrance commanded attention without demanding it, a quiet confidence in every step. Her angular bob framed her face with precision, her navy blazer and white blouse striking the perfect balance between congressional authority and late-night approachability. Gold accents at her wrist caught the studio lights as she settled into the guest chair. The first few minutes unfolded exactly as planned. Texas politics, House committee drama, a voter registration event in Fresno. Everything was going perfectly until Colbert leaned in slightly, a smirk forming at the corners of his mouth. "You know," he said with the casual rhythm of someone tossing off a throwaway joke, "you're probably the only member of Congress whose hair could get more attention than the policy." The laughter came, not from everyone, and not all for the same reasons. Some laughed because that's what you do when a late-night host makes a joke. Others because they weren't sure if it was meant as an insult. A few exchanged glances. Jasmine didn't laugh. Her expression didn't collapse or stiffen. It just shifted, a fractional pause as her smile faded by a degree and her eyes narrowed not in anger, but assessment. Colbert, still grinning, reached for his mug and took a sip like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Jasmine adjusted in her chair. Not much, just leaned in about 2 inches. She looked straight at Colbert. "You know, Stephen," she said, her tone still even, her voice strong but smooth. "Black women in Congress don't really have the luxury of being separated from how they look. We don't get to walk in and just be heard. People look before they listen." It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't loud. But it was sharp, intentional. Colbert raised his eyebrows. The audience, previously chuckling, fell still. She didn't blink. She let the silence sit. It wasn't awkward for her. It was intentional. She knew how to use space. She had done this before, not on late night maybe, but in hearings, in press conferences, in back rooms where men underestimated her with their smiles and quiet laughter. But this was different. This was live television, and that little comment meant to be playful was now carrying the weight of something far heavier. Colbert blinked, a small gesture barely noticeable. Then he smiled again, but it was tighter this time. "Oh, I didn't mean." "You don't have to explain," Jasmine said quickly, still calm. "It's not about what you meant. It's about what you think audiences expect to laugh at." She didn't say it cruelly. She said it like someone who had said this kind of thing 100 different ways in quieter rooms. But now millions were watching, and that changed everything. Just as it looked like things might simmer down, Jasmine leaned in again with something no one in the room saw coming. "I don't come on shows like this to be charming," she said, folding her hands loosely in her lap. "I come here because I represent people who don't get invited to conversations like these." Colbert sat straighter. He wasn't thrown exactly, but he looked aware now, like the room had shifted and the rules had changed. His next words came slower. "Well, I hope we can have both. A real conversation and a few laughs." Jasmine offered a half smile this time. Not cold, not sarcastic, just firm. "We can, but not at the expense of people who look like me." Now, the studio was fully alert. Phones were recording. You could see audience members leaning forward, some confused, others riveted. A woman in the second row whispered to the man next to her, "Did he really say that?" He didn't answer. He was watching Jasmine. Colbert cleared his throat and glanced toward the stage manager, but the signal he was looking for didn't come. This wasn't going to be edited out. They were still live, still rolling. And Jasmine was just getting warmed up. "You know, I grew up watching shows like this," she said, turning slightly toward the audience. "Late-night TV taught me a lot. How to laugh, how to see who gets to be the butt of the joke and who always ends up being the punchline." There was a weight to her words that didn't need raising her voice. You could feel her speaking from memory. Not a single moment, but a collection, a pattern. "And when black women do speak up," she continued, "we're either being too loud, too sensitive, or too angry. But here's the truth. If we stay quiet, we're invisible. If we speak, we're difficult. Colbert tried to lighten the mood again, leaning on his signature sarcasm. Well, now I feel like I need to book a public apology tour. Jasmine gave him a look. Not mean, just tired. This isn't about you apologizing to me, she said. It's about understanding that jokes have roots. And when those roots keep feeding the same tired ideas about who we are, what we're worth, and how we're perceived, it stops being funny. The room was dead silent. Not in a bad way. In the way people go quiet when they know something real is being said, and they don't want to miss a word. A man in the back row slowly lowered his phone. Another audience member sat completely still, hands in their lap, as if afraid that moving would shatter the moment. Colbert finally leaned back, both palms flat on the desk. I appreciate you saying that, he said. Really? Jasmine nodded once. I know. She let out a breath, but it wasn't a sigh, more like a pause, like she had finally let out something she'd been carrying around. Then she smiled, not the kind you fake to keep a conversation light, but the kind that lets people know you're not mad. You're just clear. The mood shifted again, but this time toward something deeper. Colbert softened. He wasn't trying to recover the joke anymore. He was listening, and so was the room. But before the conversation could shift back to politics or safer ground, someone offstage made a choice that would change everything. A crew member gave a small hand signal, probably meant for someone behind the camera. Colbert glanced over just for a second, and Jasmine noticed. She didn't flinch, but her voice got a touch firmer. Are we tight on time now? She asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. Colbert shook his head. No, we're good. She leaned forward just slightly again, elbows resting on her knees. Good, because there's something I want to say before we move on. Nobody stopped her. Nobody could. I've worked hard to be taken seriously in rooms where no one looks like me. Not just in Congress, but in school boards, courtrooms, newsrooms, community meetings. I've had people tell me I'm too direct, too polished, too confident. And every time I change my hair, someone suddenly wants to ask me if I'm doing okay. She paused for a second, looking out over the crowd. I wear it straight. I'm trying to fit in. I wear it natural. I'm making a statement. I switch it up. I'm confusing. But let's be real. Nobody says it when a man in power gets a haircut. There were murmurs in the crowd now, a few quiet millimeter sounds, others nodding subtly. A woman in the front row mouthed, Wow. We live in a country where image is everything, but grace only gets extended to certain people, and I'm not here to beg for that grace. I'm here to remind you that black women have always carried more than our share. We defend democracy. We raise families. We survived systems that weren't designed with us in mind. And somehow, we still show up. Colbert didn't interrupt. His pen, which he had been fiddling with absent-mindedly, rested still between his fingers. His face was more serious now. Respectful. There's a reason people remember how we look, Jasmine said. Because they don't expect us to take up space. And when we do, it makes folks uncomfortable. Not because of what we say, but because we were never supposed to be sitting at the table in the first place. She turned back to him. So when you joke about my hair, whether you meant to or not, you're tapping into something older than either of us, something too many of us are tired of carrying quietly. It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't scripted. It was just real. Colbert finally broke the silence, his voice lower now. You're right, and I want to thank you for saying it the way you did. Direct, honest, not hostile. I can hear you. I really can. Jasmine let out a soft laugh. Not sarcastic, but honest. I didn't come here to make a moment. I came here because voters trust me to show up in every room like I mean it, even this one. There was a shift again, but this time it felt earned, respectful, almost reverent. A younger producer watching from the wings whispered to the person next to her, This wasn't in the pre-interview notes. The other one just whispered back, Yeah, but this is better. In the back, someone began a slow clap, but stopped, unsure if it was the right moment. Jasmine noticed. She gave them a small nod. Colbert looked toward the camera briefly. You know, I think this is going to be one of those clips that lives a long time on the internet. Maybe, Jasmine said, but I hope it does more than live. I hope people listen. At first, there was just stillness, the kind that hovers when something true has been said and nobody wants to speak over it. A few heads nodded slowly. Others just watched Jasmine like they were seeing her for the first time. Not as a guest, not even as a congresswoman, but as a person who had just spoken a truth too many avoid. Then a woman in the fourth row, middle-aged, glasses slipping down her nose, started clapping, soft at first, a single rhythm. Others looked at her, unsure, but the moment held. Someone else joined in, then another. Within 5 seconds, the entire studio audience was applauding. Not cheering, not roaring, just clapping. Firm, respectful, sustained. A sound that didn't celebrate a punchline, but acknowledged something deeper. Jasmine looked down briefly, then back up. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was grounded. It's the kind of calm you only learn from years of being tested in rooms that don't expect your presence, let alone your voice. Colbert waited until the applause died down. Well, I think you just ran circles around me. There was a light chuckle this time. Not forced, real. Even Jasmine smiled a bit. Colbert continued. You know, this show is about jokes, but it's also about people. And I'll say this, I didn't expect to be schooled this graciously. Then we're even, Jasmine said. I didn't expect to need to say all that tonight, but I've learned not to hold it in when the doors open. The moment wasn't lost on anyone. Not the camera crew, not the sound techs in the booth, not the executive producers watching from behind the curtain. You could practically hear the decision being made in real time. This segment wasn't getting cut. If anything, it was going to air exactly as it happened. Backstage, a junior assistant pulled out her phone and started texting a group chat titled Late Show Edits. The message was simple: keep all of it. In the control room, one of the older producers, Frank, who'd worked on late night since the Carson days, leaned back in his chair. Been a long time since a guest sat in that seat and didn't play along, he murmured. You think Colbert's pissed? Someone asked. Frank shook his head. Nah. He knows a moment when he sees it. It started before Jasmine even left the building. A backstage intern named Caleb uploaded a 23-second clip to X, just a moment where she said people look before they listen. He didn't think much of it. Just a short, sharp moment he figured would maybe pull a few thousand views. 10 minutes later, it had 80,000. By the time Jasmine was walking down the hallway toward the elevator, flanked by 2 assistants and a CBS escort, her phone buzzed nonstop. She glanced at the screen. Dozens of texts, missed calls, mentions stacking faster than she could swipe. Are we trending? She asked. One of her aides checked, then looked up, eyebrows raised. Top 5, and not just politics Twitter. You're on celebrity gossip threads, feminist threads, even sports pages for some reason. One clip had her full quote. Another added commentary. This is how you handle microaggressions without raising your voice. A verified fashion journalist tweeted, Congresswoman Crockett just delivered a masterclass in grace and real-time accountability. Not everyone was supportive. A popular conservative pundit posted, late-night comedy used to be funny. Now it's therapy sessions for woke egos. By midnight, hashtags were flying. #Jasmine Crockett Colbert clip. #Black women speak hand power. Not just a comment. At 12:47 a.m., Gabrielle Union reposted a full clip with a caption, nothing louder than calm truth. By 10:03 a.m., Oprah's team had shared a quote card with Jasmine's word printed in bold letters across a charcoal background. We don't get to walk in and just be heard. People look before they listen. Jasmine sat in her hotel room in downtown L.A., lights off except for the TV flickering quietly in the corner. She wasn't watching. Her phone was still buzzing. Her cousin called from Fort Worth. Girl, you out here trending like Beyoncé at the Grammys. You okay? Jasmine smiled. I'm fine. Just tired. You were good. Real good. People needed to hear that. I didn't want to go in there to make a statement, she said. I just didn't want to laugh when it wasn't funny. You didn't, and now everybody's listening. Across the country, news desks scrambled. Editors debated how to frame the clip. Producers asked if she'd come back on. Maybe The View. Maybe Morning Joe. Publicists called her office. Reporters texted her press team for statements. The real shift, though, wasn't just happening online. In classrooms, teachers pulled up the clip for discussion. In corporate offices, staff used it to start conversations about professionalism, hair bias, and tone policing. Church groups played the clip on Sunday to spark dialogue about presence and power. Even in places where her name had never been mentioned before, people suddenly knew who she was. Not just a politician from Texas, but the woman who didn't flinch when it counted. The morning after felt like a strange mix of noise and quiet, the kind where your name is everywhere, but your room is still and your coffee hasn't even brewed yet. Jasmine sat at a small table near the window of a hotel suite, staring out at the hazy Los Angeles skyline. It was barely 7:30. Her assistant had already slipped 2 newspapers under the door. Both had her face on the front page. One called it a defining moment. The other called it an ambush. She hadn't said much since waking up, just texted her mom to say she was okay and checked in with her communications director. Her phone was still vibrating every few seconds, but she had flipped it face down. For now, she just needed to sit still. There was a knock on the door. Her longtime friend, Loretta Banks, walked in holding a to-go bag. No press, no microphone, just a friend with food. "I figured you hadn't eaten," Loretta said, placing a styrofoam container in front of her. "I haven't," Jasmine said quietly. "Thanks." Loretta sat down across from her, not saying anything right away. She opened her own container, then paused. "You all right?" Jasmine took a breath. "Yeah, I didn't plan on going viral last night. It just happened." "I watched the whole thing," Loretta said. "Twice. You didn't go in swinging. You stayed steady. You stayed you." Jasmine shook her head slowly. "It's wild." One offhand comment, and suddenly everyone's got a hot take. Loretta leaned in, elbows on the table. It wasn't just a comment. It was how you handled it. People expect outrage or silence. You gave them truth. Jasmine didn't respond right away. She picked at her food a little, finally lifting her eyes. "You know what I keep thinking about? How many times I've not said something. How many times I just smiled, let it go, stayed polite. Last night? I don't know. Something in me said, not this time." Loretta smiled. "You trusted your gut." Jasmine nodded. "And part of me wonders if I'd regret it. But I don't. I really don't." They sat in silence for a bit, the city slowly waking up outside. Finally, Jasmine spoke again. "I just wish we didn't have to earn our humanity all the time. That we didn't have to prove we belong in every room. That the bar wasn't always high for us." Loretta didn't argue. She just said, "But last night, you didn't just pass the bar. You raised it, and people saw that. Even the ones who don't want to admit it." There was something comforting in that. Not satisfying exactly, but grounding. "I didn't go on that show to fight," Jasmine said. "I just wanted to talk about voter suppression, housing justice, real things. And yet, one joke about my hair hijacked the whole thing." Loretta reached across the table, touched her hand. "Yeah, but you took it back. That's the part people remember. Not the joke. The choice you made after." A few minutes later, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. A message from a woman she didn't know with a profile picture of a high school graduation cap. "Thank you. You said what I've wanted to say for years and never knew how. Watching you last night changed how I see myself." Jasmine stared at it for a long moment. "I guess people heard me," she murmured. Loretta grinned. "Oh, they heard you, and now they're watching." The following week, Jasmine was back in Washington, moving through the Capitol like she always did. Folder under one arm, phone in her hand, a quiet urgency in her stride. The viral clip was still making headlines, but she had bills to read, meetings to attend, hearings to prepare for. She didn't have the luxury of soaking in the moment too long. She never did. Outside the Rayburn building, a young staffer from another office stopped her. Probably 23, maybe newer than her badge implied. She looked nervous. "Congresswoman Crockett." Jasmine slowed. "Yes." I just wanted to say thank you for what you said on Colbert. It meant a lot to me, to a lot of us. Jasmine smiled gently. That means more than you know. The staffer hesitated, then added, I've been told to tone it down in meetings, that I come across too assertive. But when I saw you, I thought maybe I don't need to change. You don't, Jasmine said steadily. You just need to know which rooms deserve you. She walked away without needing to say more. That moment stayed with her all day. Not because it was rare, but because it wasn't. Women like that staffer were everywhere, quietly shrinking, second-guessing themselves, trimming their edges just to be allowed a seat at the table. And the sad part, most of them didn't even notice they were doing it anymore. Later that evening, Jasmine sat on the floor of her apartment with her shoes off and a bowl of cold pasta in her lap. She scrolled through an email thread titled Monday Talking Points, but kept getting distracted. Her brain kept drifting, not to the clip, not to the moment, but to the response, the letters, the DMs, the phone calls, from young girls, from old teachers, from barbershop owners, from mothers who said their daughters wanted to wear their hair naturally to school for the first time. She hadn't changed the world, but maybe she'd cracked a window in it. Colbert eventually reached out again, this time through a handwritten letter. Jasmine read it twice. He didn't excuse what he said. He didn't over-apologize either. He just acknowledged her, thanked her for her honesty, and promised to listen harder. She could respect that. Later, on a radio interview with a station in Cincinnati, a host asked her what she hoped people would take away from the moment. She paused before answering. I hope people understand that words carry weight, even the small ones, especially the small ones, and that grace doesn't mean silence. You can stand firm without being cruel. And if something needs to be said, say it clearly, calmly, without shrinking. That clip made its own rounds. Not viral like before, but meaningful. Because the story wasn't about a viral moment anymore. It wasn't about Colbert or the studio or even the joke. It was about how someone chose to meet a moment with clarity instead of rage, with substance instead of spectacle. It was about what happens when you don't laugh to make others comfortable, when you don't shrink to fit the room, when you stay in your seat, lift your chin, and make sure your voice matches the weight of your presence. Not louder, just clearer. And in that clarity, something shifts. Not just in others, but in the way you see yourself. That was the real message. And that's why the moment lived on. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell.